I think about as above, so below all the time when I'm making my jewelry, especially when I'm crushing stone, because I'll start with one whole piece and break it into dozens or even hundreds of tiny fragments. Every one of those fragments looks a little different once it's separated from the whole, but every single one of them is still made of the same thing it came from. I think about us in a very similar way. I believe that we all come from some kind of source. You can call that source God, the universe, the divine creation, the sun, or whatever language makes sense to you. The name isn't really important to me because when you look across religions, spiritual traditions, and even some of our oldest stories, we seem to keep coming back to this idea that there is something greater than the individual self that we came from and are somehow still connected to. The question I find really interesting is how something that is everything could ever experience itself. If source is everything and nothing all at the same time, then there isn't anything outside of it. So maybe the only way for the whole to truly experience itself is to divide itself into pieces, with each little fragment carrying some part of the original source, but experiencing existence from its own individual point of view. One fragment gets to experience what it's like to be me. Another gets to experience what it's like to be you. We experience being someone's mother or daughter, falling in love, losing someone, creating something, being afraid, finding courage, getting something completely wrong, and learning from it. We affect other people's experiences and they affect ours. And every one of those lives becomes a perspective that couldn't have existed in exactly that way without the separation. Then I start wondering whether that same pattern continues everywhere. When I look down at one of these tiny pieces of stone on my table, from my perspective, it's incredibly small. But then I can look at my own hand and realize that there are trillions of cells making up the human body, along with microorganisms living on us and inside of us. At that scale, I'm not the little thing anymore. I'm the environment that all of those little things are existing within. Then I can turn the question around. If there are entire levels of existence beneath the scale that I normally perceive, why wouldn't I at least wonder about what exists beyond the scale that I can perceive? Maybe what I call the macro is only the macro because of where I'm standing. Maybe from another perspective, I'm part of the micro. And that's where as above, so below becomes much more than a beautiful phrase to me. It makes me think about patterns repeating through different scales of existence and about the possibility that being an individual doesn't necessarily mean being separate from the whole. It's almost like Horton hears a who. There can be an entire world existing within something that another world barely notices. And the beings inside of it have no reason to experience their world as tiny. To them, it's simply reality. So sometimes I'll be sitting here making jewelry, looking at all these little fragments of what used to be one stone, and I wonder whether that's a little bit like us. Maybe we're each having this incredibly individual experience of being one tiny fragment of something much larger while carrying the larger thing within us the entire time. And maybe that's part of what As Above, So Below has been trying to get us to think about all along. If you enjoy conversations like this, the kind that make you look at something you've seen a thousand times and maybe think about it a little differently, I hope you'll follow along because these are the kinds of things I think about all the time while I'm creating. And if something I said made you think of a connection of your own, I genuinely love to hear it. Leave it in the comments because sometimes one person's thought becomes the question that sends somebody else down an entirely new path. Your likes, comments, shares, and follows really do help this content reach more people. And I appreciate every one of you who takes the time to interact with what I'm creating. And while we're talking about all of this, I'm curious what you think about the jewelry I've been making in the background because there's actually a lot more going on inside these pieces than what you can see from the outside. This is my piezoelectric jewelry. And yes, the piezoelectric part is very real. I'm working with piezoelectric materials that can generate electrical charge under mechanical stress. And I've created these pieces around the idea of keeping that energy under pressure within the jewelry. I combine that with crystals and minerals that I personally choose for grounding, alignment, protection, and the energetic environment we're constantly moving through, including all of the technology and EMFs that have become such a normal part of modern life. And then there's the part that I think makes these pieces especially beautiful. In my full and hydro pieces, I'm actually creating a chamber of full moon water inside the jewelry. So the crystals, minerals, mother of pearl, tiny pieces of stone, and whatever else I've collected for that particular piece can drift freely through the water. Every time you move, the entire little environment inside moves with you. So the piece is constantly changing depending on how the light hits it and where all of those little fragments happen to settle. It's almost like carrying around a tiny world of its own, which, considering everything we've just been talking about with worlds existing within worlds, feels especially fitting. I'd really like to know what you think of these pieces so far, and if there are particular crystals or minerals you'd like to see me work with in the next one, leave them in the comments. I get some of my best ideas when somebody mentions a combination I haven't thought about before. Until the next one, keep asking questions, keep paying attention to the patterns, and stay aligned.